The crystal floors of the Velshara Palace gleamed like frozen starlight beneath Mira Chen's worn boots. She pushed her cleaning cart through the servant corridors, her shoulders aching from 10 hours of scrubbing and polishing. The Azurians who ruled this world built everything beautiful and cold just like themselves. Their luminescent blue skin glowed softly in the dim passages where humans worked, and their black eyes never really saw the conquered people who served them. Mira had been on Velshara for 3 years now. Earth had lost the war when she was just 17. The Azurian Empire swept through human colonies like a silver tide, their ships powered by technology humans barely understood. The peace treaty was simple: surrender or extinction. Earth chose survival, and survival meant tribute. Thousands of humans were sent to Azurian worlds as indentured servants, working off the war debt one thankless day at a time. She was 20 now, though she felt older. Her black hair was always tied back in a strict bun, as palace rules required. Her gray uniform marked her as property of the imperial household. Most days blurred together in an endless routine of cleaning, bowing, and staying invisible. Today was different. The head servant, an Azurian named Kess with silver markings on her temples, found Mira in the East Wing. "You human." Kess never used their names. "The beast kennels need cleaning." The other servants refused to go. Mira's stomach dropped. The beast kennels housed the royal family's hunting creatures, massive predators imported from a dozen conquered worlds. Most servants avoided that duty because the animals were dangerous and unpredictable. "Why won't they go?" she asked quietly. Kess's telepathic voice touched Mira's mind, making her skin crawl. All Azurians could speak this way to each other, a private language humans couldn't hear. But they could push simple commands into human minds. "Prince Davith's Void Stalker is injured and aggressive. The handlers cannot approach it. Someone must clean the kennel regardless. You will do this." It wasn't a request. Mira took a deep breath and nodded. She'd grown up on a farm colony where her grandfather worked with animals. He'd taught her that hurt creatures were scared creatures, not evil ones. Maybe that knowledge would keep her alive today. The kennels occupied a massive underground chamber carved from black stone. The air smelled of meat and musk and something sharp that made her eyes water. Cages lined the walls, each holding something that could kill a human in seconds. Most were empty now, the creatures out on hunts with their noble owners. But in the largest cage at the far end, something moved. The Void Stalker was beautiful and terrible. Its body stretched 12 feet long, covered in midnight black scales that seemed to absorb light. 6 powerful legs ended in claws that could shred steel. Its head was sleek and serpentine with rows of crystalline teeth and eyes that glowed amber in the darkness, and it was bleeding. A deep gash ran along its left flank, probably from a hunt gone wrong. The wound wept dark purple blood onto the cage floor. The creature circled restlessly, making low growling sounds that vibrated in Mira's chest. Every few seconds it snapped at the air, its distress obvious. The cage door stood open. The handlers must have fled in panic. Mira knew she should just clean around the cage and leave. But her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. Leaving something to suffer when you can help is a choice. "Mira, make sure you can live with your choices." She approached slowly, keeping her body loose and non-threatening. "Hey there," she said softly. "You're hurting, aren't you? I can see that." The Void Stalker's head snapped toward her, its amber eyes locked onto hers and its lips pulled back to show those terrible teeth. A warning. Mira stopped but didn't retreat. "I know, I'm scared too. But that wound needs cleaning or it'll get infected. Even big tough hunters like you can't fight an infection." She spotted a medical kit on the wall, probably left by the fled handlers. Moving carefully, she retrieved it and found antiseptic spray and clean bandages. Her hands shook as she opened the kit, but she kept her breathing steady. "I'm coming closer now," she told the creature. "I'm trying to help." She took 3 steps toward the cage. The Void Stalker snarled, a sound like tearing metal. But it didn't charge. Its eyes tracked her every movement, intelligent and calculating. Mira crouched down, making herself smaller and less threatening. "My grandfather used to say animals know when you're trying to help." I hope he was right. She extended her hand slowly, holding the antiseptic spray where the creature could see it. "This will sting, but it'll help. I promise." For a long moment, nothing happened. The Void Stalker's breathing was labored, its injured side heaving. Pain clouded its eyes. Then slowly it lowered its head and stopped snarling. Mira took that as permission. She moved into the cage, every nerve in her body screaming at her to run. She knelt beside the creature's wounded flank, close enough to feel the heat radiating from its body. Up close, it was even more massive, each of its 6 legs thicker than her torso. "Okay," she whispered. "Here we go." She sprayed the antiseptic onto the wound. The Void Stalker's entire body tensed and a deep growl rumbled through it. But it didn't move. Mira worked quickly, cleaning away the dried blood and debris. The wound was deep but clean, probably from another predator's claw. "You fought something big, didn't you?" she said, her voice soothing. "But you won. You're strong." She was reaching for the bandages when the Void Stalker suddenly jerked. Its head whipped around and Mira realized her mistake too late. She'd touched a nerve cluster near the wound, sending a jolt of pain through the creature. The beast's jaws clamped down on her right forearm. Pain exploded through Mira's body, white-hot and all-consuming. She felt the teeth pierce her flesh, felt something hot and burning flood into her veins. The Void Stalker's venom. She'd heard the handlers talk about it. How it killed most species in minutes, how even Azurians rarely survived. She wanted to scream but forced the sound down. Screaming would make the creature bite harder. Instead, she went limp, stopping all resistance. "It's okay," she gasped through the pain. "It's okay. I'm not fighting you." The Void Stalker held her for 3 more seconds that felt like hours. Then, as if realizing what it had done, the creature released her and backed away. Its amber eyes were wide now, almost confused. Mira collapsed to the floor, clutching her mangled arm. Blood poured between her fingers, mixing with something else, something that glowed faintly purple in the dim light. The venom. She could feel it spreading through her body like liquid fire, burning through her veins. The room tilted and spun. She heard shouting, felt hands grabbing her, pulling her from the cage. Azurian voices filled the air, speaking too fast for her to follow. Someone said, "The human is dead. The venom works too quickly." Someone else said, "Seal off the kennel. Prince Davith will want to know his beast killed a servant." Mira tried to speak, to tell them she wasn't dead yet, but her tongue wouldn't work. The burning in her veins intensified, spreading from her arm to her chest, her head, her legs. Every cell in her body felt like it was being torn apart and rebuilt. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was the Void Stalker watching her through the cage bars. Its eyes held something that might have been regret. Then the pain became everything, and Mira Chen knew nothing at all. Mira woke to the sound of voices arguing in hushed Azurian. Her eyelids felt heavy, like someone had weighted them with stones. Every part of her body ached with a deep, bone-level soreness that reminded her of the time she'd caught fever as a child. But underneath the ache was something else, something that hummed. She forced her eyes open. White ceiling panels glowed softly above her, embedded with the same crystal technology the Azurians used for everything. She was lying on a medical bed in a room she didn't recognize. Clean white walls, sterile air, medical equipment she couldn't name lined the walls, their displays showing symbols she couldn't read. "The human is conscious," someone said sharply. Mira turned her head and immediately regretted it. Dizziness washed over her, but she pushed through it. 3 Azurians stood near her bed, all wearing the deep purple robes of palace physicians. Their luminescent skin glowed brighter with their agitation, and their black eyes studied her with an expression she'd never seen Azurians wear before. They looked shocked. "How long?" Mira croaked, her throat dry as sand. The nearest physician, an older male with silver markings across his skull, stepped forward. 26 hours since the Void Stalker bit you. You should be dead, human. You should have died 25 hours ago." Mira looked down at her right arm. It was wrapped in clean white bandages that covered her from wrist to elbow. She could see the edges of the wound where the bandages ended, marked by angry red scars. But the flesh was closed. Healing. The burning sensation she remembered from the venom was gone, replaced by that strange humming feeling that seemed to pulse through her veins in rhythm with her heartbeat. "I don't understand," she said. "The venom should have killed you within an hour," the physician interrupted. His voice carried an edge of something that might have been fear. "Void Stalker venom is universally fatal to non-native species. We've documented 63 species that have been exposed to it across the Empire's history. All died. The fastest death was 42 minutes. The longest was 6 hours. You are alive at 26 hours. Another physician, a female with patterns like lightning across her temples, moved closer. "We need to take more blood samples. We need to understand what happened." Before Mira could respond, the door to the medical room opened. The physicians immediately bowed their heads in respect. Mira's stomach sank as she recognized the figure who entered. Prince Davith was tall even by Azurian standards, nearly 7 feet of lean muscle and predatory grace. His skin glowed brighter than most, marking his royal bloodline. He wore black armor etched with silver patterns that seemed to shift when he moved. His face was angular and sharp, beautiful in the way a knife was beautiful. His black eyes fixed on Mira with an intensity that made her want to shrink into the bed. "So, the human survived," he said, his voice deep and resonant. Unlike the servants who used telepathy to command, he spoke aloud, his accent precise. "Impossible, yet here you are." Mira didn't know if she was supposed to respond or stay silent. She chose silence. Prince Davith approached her bed, studying her like she was a specimen in a laboratory. "What is your name, human?" "Mira Chen, Your Highness," she said quietly. "Mira Chen," he repeated, as if testing the sounds. "You entered my beast's cage without permission. You touched my property, and somehow when my Voidstalker should have killed you, you lived. Explain this." "I can't," Mira said honestly. "I was trying to help. The beast was injured and—" "The beast is worth more than 100 human servants," Prince Davith cut her off coldly. "You risked valuable property with your interference." Anger flared in Mira's chest, hot and sudden. She'd nearly died trying to help his animal, and he was worried about property, but she bit back the words that wanted to escape. Speaking out of turn to an Azurian prince was a good way to end up executed. Survival or no survival. The prince must have seen something in her face because his expression shifted slightly, a hint of curiosity entering his cold gaze. "You have thoughts you wish to express. Speak them." It was an order, not permission, which meant she had no choice. "I was trying to help a creature in pain, Your Highness. Where I come from, that's what decent people do." The room went absolutely silent. The physicians looked horrified that a human servant had just implied an Azurian prince might not be decent. But Prince Davith's expression didn't change. He studied her for a long moment. "Interesting," he said finally. "Your species continues to surprise us with your stubborn refusal to accept your place." He turned to the physicians. "I want complete medical workups, everything, blood, tissue, genetic scans. Find out what allowed this human to survive. The High Chancellor will want a report by tomorrow." The physicians bowed. "Yes, Your Highness. But sire, we've already found something unusual in the preliminary scans." Prince Davith's eyes narrowed. "Show me." The senior physician activated a display panel on the wall. Mira couldn't understand most of the Azurian text and symbols, but she recognized images of cells and molecules. The physician pointed to one section that pulsed with a faint purple glow. "The venom has bonded with her cellular structure," he explained. "Instead of destroying her cells, it appears to have integrated with them. Her immune system adapted to it. We've never seen anything like this. Her healing rate has increased by approximately 300%. Her bone density has improved. Her muscle tissue is restructuring itself." "What does that mean?" Mira asked before she could stop herself. The female physician turned to her, and for the first time, Mira saw something like respect in an Azurian's eyes. "It means the venom is changing you, human. You're becoming something we don't have a name for yet. Part human, part something else." The humming in Mira's veins suddenly made sense. It wasn't her imagination. Her body was literally vibrating with energy it hadn't possessed before. "There's more," the senior physician continued, glancing at Prince Davith nervously. "We detected unusual neural activity in her brain. Patterns that resemble—" He hesitated. "Resembles what?" the prince demanded. "Telepathic resonance, sire. Very faint but measurable. The human appears to be developing sensitivity to telepathic frequencies." The room went cold. Humans couldn't sense telepathy. That was a fact as basic as gravity. It was one of the reasons Azurians considered humans inferior, unable to access the higher forms of communication that civilized species used. Prince Davith stared at Mira with an expression she couldn't read. "Test it," he ordered. The female physician nodded. She closed her eyes and her skin brightened slightly. Mira felt something brush against her mind, gentle as a feather. It wasn't words exactly, but more like an emotion. Curiosity, question, and Mira could feel it. Her eyes widened. "I felt that," she whispered. "You asked me something." Without words, the physicians exchanged glances. Prince Davith's jaw tightened. "This is impossible. Humans don't have the neural structures for telepathic reception. We didn't either until now." the senior physician said quietly. The venom has changed her, sire. We don't know how much or for how long, but she is no longer fully human. Mira's mind raced. She wasn't fully human anymore. The words should have terrified her, but instead she felt a strange sense of wonder. Her whole life, she'd been powerless, conquered, enslaved. Now something inside her had changed, had evolved, and suddenly the Azurians were looking at her with uncertainty instead of contempt. What happens now? She asked, directing the question at Prince Davith. The prince regarded her silently for a long moment. Finally, he said, Now you become a problem that needs solving. You will be moved to secure quarters. No contact with other humans. No leaving without escort. The High Chancellor will decide your fate. Am I a prisoner? You were always a prisoner, Mira Chen, Prince Davith said coldly. Now you're simply a prisoner who has attracted attention. Pray that attention doesn't get you killed. He turned and left the room, his armor clinking softly with each step. The physicians began preparing their instruments for more tests. Mira lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling and feeling the strange new humming in her blood. She'd survived something impossible, but she was starting to realize that survival might be the easiest part of what came next. The secure quarters turned out to be a small suite of rooms in the palace's north tower. It was the nicest place Mira had lived since arriving on Velshara, with a real bed instead of a bunk, a window overlooking the crystal gardens, and even a private bathroom. But the locked door and the guards outside made it clear she was a prisoner in everything but name. 5 days passed in a blur of medical tests and isolation. The physicians came 3 times daily, taking blood, scanning her body, asking endless questions. Each day, Mira felt the changes growing stronger. Her senses sharpened until she could hear conversations in distant hallways. Her body moved with a grace and strength she'd never possessed, and the telepathic sensitivity kept developing, letting her feel the emotional states of nearby Azurians like whispers at the edge of her awareness. On the 6th day, everything changed. Mira was sitting by her window when she felt it. A wave of fear rippled through the palace, carried on the telepathic frequencies she could now sense. It was like standing in a still pond and feeling the vibrations of something large moving underwater, distant at first, then closer. Then everywhere at once, explosions echoed through the palace. The building shook. Alarms began to wail. Mira ran to her door and pounded on it. What's happening? No one answered. Through the door, she could hear shouts and the sound of running feet. Another explosion, closer this time. The lights flickered and went red, emergency systems activating throughout the palace. Then silence from the guards outside. Complete, terrible silence. Mira pressed her ear to the door. Nothing. Using her newfound sensitivity, she reached out with her mind, trying to feel the guards' presence. Empty. They were gone or dead. She tried the door. It slid open. Her guards lay on the floor, their throats cut cleanly. Blood pooled beneath them, still spreading. Mira's stomach turned, but she forced herself to step over them. Something catastrophic was happening, and staying locked in a room would get her killed. She ran down the corridor, her bare feet silent on the crystal floors. Smoke drifted through the halls. She passed more bodies, both guards and servants. Some were Azurian, but too many were human. Someone was killing indiscriminately. A telepathic broadcast suddenly slammed into her mind, so powerful it dropped her to her knees. Words formed in her head, spoken in a voice she didn't recognize. People of Velshara, the Crimson Spiral has taken control of the palace. The weak emperor who bows to conquered species will bow no more. A new order begins today. The Crimson Spiral. Mira had heard whispers about them in the servant quarters. Azurian extremists who believed the empire had grown soft, who wanted to return to the days of pure conquest and domination. They were fanatics who saw any mercy toward conquered species as betrayal. Another explosion shook the palace. Mira pulled herself up and kept moving. She needed to find other humans, needed to figure out what was happening. But as she rounded a corner, she nearly collided with a figure in dark red armor. The rebel soldier raised his weapon, a crystalline blade that hummed with energy. His eyes behind his helmet were cold and calculating. A human. Lost little servant, Mira backed away, her hands raised. I'm not a threat. I'm just trying to find— You're a witness, the soldier interrupted. He advanced on her, blade raised. Can't have witnesses. Mira's body reacted before her mind could catch up. The venom-enhanced reflexes that had been developing suddenly activated. She dodged the first strike, moving faster than she'd ever moved in her life. The blade passed inches from her face. She dropped low and swept the soldier's legs, a move her grandfather had taught her years ago, but that her old body could never have executed this cleanly. The soldier hit the ground hard. Mira grabbed his blade arm and slammed it against the floor until his grip loosened. She took the weapon, her hand shaking. "Where are the hostages?" she demanded. The soldier laughed, a harsh sound. "The throne room, where the false prince and his weakling father will die with all their sympathizers. The new order will be built on their ashes. Prince David." Despite everything, despite his coldness, Mira felt a surge of alarm. If the rebels killed the royal family, what would happen to the humans in the palace? To the thousands more on Velshara? She hit the soldier with the pommel of his own blade, knocking him unconscious. Then she ran toward the throne room. The palace was chaos. Smoke filled the corridors. Bodies lay everywhere. She passed clusters of loyalist guards fighting rebel soldiers, but she didn't stop. The throne room was in the heart of the palace, 3 floors down and half a mile of corridors away. She was halfway there when she felt it. A familiar presence, one she'd bonded with in the beast kennels. The Void Stalker. Following her instincts, Mira took a side corridor that led toward the kennels. She found the great beast pacing in the corridor, agitated and confused. The explosions had damaged its cage. Blood stained its mouth. It had killed several rebels who'd tried to use the kennels as a route through the palace. When it saw Mira, it went still. Its amber eyes locked onto hers. "Hey," she said softly, approaching slowly. "Remember me? I'm the one who tried to help you." The Void Stalker made a low rumbling sound, not quite a growl. Through their strange bond, Mira felt its confusion and fear. It didn't understand why its home was full of death and violence. "I need your help," Mira said. She knew it was insane to talk to a predator like it could understand, but the venom bond had changed something between them. "Prince David is in danger. Your master. They want to kill him." The beast's ears perked up at David's name. It understood. Mira felt a wave of fierce protectiveness roll off the creature. Whatever else the Void Stalker was, it was loyal to its master. "Come with me," Mira said. "We're going to save him." Together they ran through the palace. The Void Stalker moved like liquid shadow, its 6 legs carrying it at frightening speed. Rebels who saw them coming either fled or died. Nothing could stand against 12 feet of armored predator, and Mira's enhanced senses let her guide them around the heaviest fighting. They reached the throne room's outer chamber. The massive doors were sealed and guarded by a dozen rebel soldiers in red armor. Beyond those doors, Mira could feel the telepathic signatures of hundreds of Azurians pressed together. Hostages. The rebel commander stepped forward when he saw Mira and the Void Stalker. He was a massive Azurian with scars across his luminescent skin, a human and a beast. How quaint. "Kill them!" The soldiers raised their weapons. Energy blasts filled the air. Mira dove behind a pillar as the Void Stalker charged. The beast was a whirlwind of claws and teeth, tearing through the rebels with savage efficiency. Mira used her stolen blade to cut down 2 soldiers who tried to flank the creature. It was over in seconds. The rebel commander lay dead, his armor torn open. The other soldiers were scattered across the floor, broken and bleeding. Mira ran to the throne room doors and tried to open them, locked from the inside. She pounded on them. "Open up!" "The outer guards are dead." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the doors slowly opened. Inside, she saw hundreds of Azurian nobles packed into the vast chamber. At the center, surrounded by a ring of loyalist guards, stood the Emperor and Prince David. Prince David's eyes widened when he saw Mira. "The human? How did you—" "No time!" Mira cut him off. "There are more rebels coming. We need to evacuate the hostages now." The Emperor, an ancient Azurian with skin like aged silver, studied her with sharp intelligence. "Who are you to give orders in my palace?" "I'm someone who just saved your life," Mira shot back. The venom had made her bolder. Or maybe she was just too tired to care about protocol anymore. "Your Majesty, we can argue about my place later. Right now, we need to move." The Void Stalker padded into the throne room, its bloody jaws making several nobles gasp and back away. It walked directly to Prince David and pressed its great head against his chest. The prince's expression softened slightly as he touched the beast. "She's right," David said, addressing his father. "The Crimson Spiral has control of most of the palace. We need to reach the evacuation shuttles." The Emperor nodded slowly. "Very well. Lead us, human." Mira felt hundreds of Azurian eyes on her. The conquered servant was now leading the conquerors to safety. The irony wasn't lost on her, but she pushed the thought aside. She could process this insanity later, if she survived. With the Void Stalker at her side and her enhanced senses guiding the way, Mira led the Emperor, Prince Davith, and 300 Azurian nobles through the burning palace toward freedom. The evacuation took 3 hours. 3 hours of navigating smoke-filled corridors, avoiding rebel patrols, and keeping 300 terrified nobles quiet and moving. Mira's enhanced senses saved them more than once, detecting enemy movements before they walked into ambushes. The Void Stalker cleared their path when avoidance wasn't possible, its presence alone enough to make most rebels think twice about engaging. By the time they reached the palace's emergency shuttle bay, Loyalist forces had begun pushing back the Crimson Spiral. Military ships descended from orbit, and the tide of battle turned. The rebels, realizing they'd failed to kill the Emperor, began surrendering or fleeing. Mira stood in the shuttle bay, covered in dust and blood that wasn't hers, and watched the Emperor board his personal transport. Prince Davith stood beside his father, speaking in low, urgent tones. Around them, nobles climbed into shuttles, their perfect composure shattered. Many stared at Mira as they passed, their expressions ranging from shock to something that might have been gratitude. A human had saved them. A conquered servant had led them to safety when their own kind had tried to kill them. The irony burned in the air like smoke. Commander Threx, head of the Imperial Guard, approached Mira with measured steps. His armor was scorched and dented from fighting. "The Emperor wishes to speak with you," he said, his tone neutral but his eyes filled with barely concealed suspicion. Mira followed him to the Emperor's shuttle. Inside, the space was elegant even in its functionality, all crystal panels and soft lighting. The Emperor sat on a raised seat, Prince Davith standing at his right hand. 3 other figures occupied the chamber, high-ranking nobles who comprised the Emperor's inner council. The Emperor gestured for Mira to approach. She did, acutely aware that she was tracking dirt across the pristine floor. The Void Stalker tried to follow her, but guards blocked it. The beast made a distressed sound until Prince Davith called it to his side. "Mira Chen," the Emperor said, his voice carrying centuries of authority. "You saved my life today. You saved my son. You saved 300 of the Empire's most important citizens. This cannot be ignored." Mira wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a threat. She bowed as was expected. "I did what anyone would do, Your Majesty." "Anyone?" One of the council members, a female with gold markings, laughed coldly. "No Azurian servant would dare take command as you did. No conquered species has ever led Imperial citizens anywhere." "Then maybe you underestimated what humans can do," Mira said quietly. The silence that followed was absolute. Prince Davith's expression tightened, but he didn't speak. The Emperor leaned forward, studying Mira with those ancient black eyes. "Perhaps we have," he said finally. "Tell me, Mira Chen, what do you want? Name a reward, and if it is within my power, it is yours." Mira's heart pounded. This was a test, she realized. Give the wrong answer and she'd be dead before sunrise, reward or no reward. But she'd come too far to lie now. "Freedom," she said. "For me and for my people. Real freedom. Not servitude with a different name. We didn't start your war, but we're paying for it. That's not justice." The council members erupted in angry telepathic chatter that Mira could feel like static. One of them spoke aloud, his voice sharp. "The human dares demand we release our war prizes? Unthinkable, is it?" Mira met the Emperor's eyes. "Your own people just tried to kill you. The Crimson Spiral exists because you've built an empire on conquest and domination. How many other species are waiting for their chance to rebel? How long before another group decides you're too weak?" "Careful, human," Prince Davith warned. "You overstep." "She speaks truth," the Emperor said, silencing his son with a gesture. "Uncomfortable truth, but truth nonetheless. The Crimson Spiral rose because we have factions who believe any mercy is weakness. They see the changes we've implemented, the small reforms, as betrayal." He stood, and everyone in the room instinctively straightened. "I will tell you something that cannot leave this room," the Emperor continued. "The High Council gathered in secret 3 days ago. We reviewed intelligence reports from across the Empire. 17 conquered species are showing signs of organized resistance. Sabotage is increasing. Production is falling. Our grip is slipping." He moved to a window, gazing out at the palace below, still smoking from the attack. "We built our empire on a lie, Mira Chen. We told ourselves we were superior because we had telepathy. because we had technology, because we won battles. But superiority isn't about winning. It's about what you build after the winning is done. The Emperor turned back to face her. Your survival of the Voidstalker venom proved something we didn't want to acknowledge. Humans adapt. You don't just survive, you evolve. And perhaps that makes you more dangerous than any weapon we possess. So what happens now? Mira asked. Do you kill me to keep that secret? We could, the female council member said coldly. It would be prudent. No, the Emperor said firmly. What happens now is we face reality. Mira Chen, I cannot grant freedom to all humans in the Empire. The political cost would be too high, the pushback too great. But I can offer something else. He gestured to one of his advisors who produced a data tablet, a trial program. Humans in the Velshara system will be granted provisional citizenship status, full legal rights, freedom of movement, the ability to own property and refuse work. It affects approximately 30,000 humans out of the millions in the Empire. But it's a start. Mira's breath caught. It wasn't everything, but it was something. A crack in the wall. And the others? The millions? We'll watch what happens here, the Emperor said. If the trial succeeds, other systems will follow. If it fails, we return to the old ways. You will be the liaison between your people and the Empire, a position that has never existed before. Why me? Prince David spoke up for the first time. Because you're no longer fully human and you're not Azurian. You exist between two worlds now. That makes you either perfectly suited for this role or perfectly useless. We'll find out which. There's one condition, the Emperor added. This information about your venom transformation cannot spread. If other humans try to replicate what happened to you, the results could be catastrophic. You are an anomaly, not a blueprint. Mira thought of the humans in the servant quarters suffering every day. If word got out that Voidstalker venom could give them powers, how many would try it? How many would die? I understand, she said. I'll keep the secret. Good. The Emperor returned to his seat. Then we have an accord. You will have a suite in the palace, a salary and authority to negotiate on behalf of human workers. Prince Davith will serve as your sponsor in court, teaching you our ways. The prince's jaw tightened at this announcement, but he bowed. As you command, father. The shuttle lifted off, carrying them away from the damaged palace. Mira looked out the window at the world below, the crystal cities of Velshara spreading out in all directions. Somewhere down there, 30,000 humans would wake up tomorrow with rights they'd never had before. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. One more thing, the Emperor said as the shuttle climbed toward orbit. The Crimson Spiral's attack will be broadcast across the Empire, and so will the fact that a human saved the royal family. The silence you've noticed? Mira had noticed. The throne room, the shuttles, the palace guards. Every Azurian who saw her had fallen silent, their usual telepathic chatter ceasing. It's shame, the Emperor explained. The palace is silent because they're ashamed. A conquered servant did what our own people could not. She showed courage when we showed fear. That silence will spread, and perhaps that shame will finally force us to examine what we've become. He met Mira's eyes one final time. You've given us something we haven't had in centuries, Mira Chen. A mirror. What we see in it may destroy the Empire as it exists, or it may save it. Time will tell. The shuttle broke atmosphere and the stars appeared above them. Mira touched the scar on her arm, feeling the venom still humming in her veins. She'd been bitten by a beast and survived. Now she had to survive something potentially more dangerous. Politics, change, hope. The palace might be silent now, but Mira had a feeling the silence wouldn't last long. 6 months changed everything and nothing at all. Mira stood in the palace's diplomatic hall, watching through the massive crystal windows as human and Azurian workers moved cargo together in the shipyards below. The sight still amazed her. Humans with rights, working alongside their former masters as equals. At least that was the theory. You're thinking too hard again, Prince Davith said from behind her. Mira turned to find him reviewing documents on a data tablet. He'd become a constant presence in her life over these months, her sponsor and unwilling teacher. Their relationship had evolved from hostile to something resembling mutual respect, though he'd never admit it aloud. The 3rd District reported another incident yesterday, Mira said. Azurian workers refusing to take orders from human supervisors. 2 humans were injured. Davith set down his tablet with a sigh. I know. Commander Threx sent me the report. The instigators have been arrested. Arrested but not punished, Mira pointed out. The humans who defended themselves got harsher sentences. I'm working on that, Davith said, and the frustration in his voice was genuine. Change doesn't happen overnight, Mira. We're rewriting laws that have stood for 1,000 years. Tell that to the humans in the hospital. They'd had this argument a dozen times. The trial program was working in some areas and failing miserably in others. 30,000 humans now had citizenship rights in the Velshara system, but those rights meant nothing if Azurian authorities refused to enforce them. Some districts embraced the changes, others actively sabotaged them, and the violence was getting worse. There's something else, Mira said, pulling up a secured file on her own tablet. Intelligence from Earth, they're planning something big. Davith's expression sharpened. Show me. Mira transferred the file to his device. Over the past months, her role as liaison had given her access to information from both sides of the conflict. Human resistance networks on Earth had made contact with her, seeing her as either a hero or a traitor depending on who you asked. What she'd learned terrified her. Earth's governments are coordinating a joint offensive, she explained. They've been building ships in secret, developing weapons. They plan to strike 6 Azurian colony worlds simultaneously in 3 months. Davith read through the intelligence, his luminescent skin darkening with concern. Casualties would be in the millions. It would restart the war. They don't know about the trial program, Mira said, or they don't care. From Earth's perspective, we're still slaves. They think they're liberating us? By killing everyone in the crossfire? Desperate people do desperate things. Mira moved away from the window, her enhanced senses picking up the telepathic signatures of approaching Azurians. Court was about to begin. We need to stop them. We? Davith raised an eyebrow. You want to work against your own people? I want to save lives on both sides, Mira corrected. This attack will give the hardliners everything they want. The Crimson Spiral is already rebuilding. Another war would be the excuse they need to exterminate every human in the Empire. Before Davith could respond, an aide entered to announce that the Emperor was ready to see them. They walked together through the palace halls, and Mira still marveled at the change. 6 months ago, she'd scrubbed these floors. Now she walked them as an official diplomat, wearing formal robes and carrying authority that still felt foreign. The throne room had been rebuilt after the Crimson Spiral attack, more beautiful than before. The Emperor sat on his crystal throne, surrounded by council members and nobles. As Mira and Davith entered, she felt the familiar ripple of telepathic silence that followed her everywhere now. The shame the Emperor had spoken of hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown stronger. Ambassador Chen, the Emperor greeted her formally. Prince Davith, you have urgent news? Mira presented the intelligence about Earth's planned attack. The throne room erupted in telepathic chaos that she could feel like storm winds. Council members argued silently, their emotions crashing against her enhanced senses. Fear, anger, vindication from those who'd opposed the trial program. The Emperor raised a hand, and silence fell. This attack would justify immediate retaliation. We could end the human problem permanently. You mean genocide? Mira said flatly. I mean survival, the Emperor replied, but his tone was sad rather than angry. We gave your people an opportunity for peace. This is how they respond? They don't know about it, Mira argued. Let me go to Earth. Let me tell them what's happening here. They need to see that change is possible. Send you to Earth? One of the council members laughed bitterly. She'd join their rebellion immediately. Then you don't know me, Mira shot back. She turned to the Emperor. I'm not asking for trust. I'm asking for a chance. Send a delegation, humans and Azurians together. Show Earth's governments that cooperation is possible. It's a trap, another council member insisted. They'll kill any delegation we send. Prince Davith stepped forward. Then I'll lead it. If Earth's governments kill the Emperor's son, they lose any moral high ground. It would turn their own people against them. The Emperor studied his son with an unreadable expression. You would risk your life for this? I would risk my life for the Empire, Davith corrected. And right now the Empire needs this war to not happen. Mira felt a surge of respect for the prince. 6 months ago he'd looked at her like she was property. Now he was willing to travel to humanity's homeworld to prevent her people's destruction. The Emperor was silent for a long moment, his telepathic presence heavy with thought. Finally he nodded. Very well. Ambassador Chen and Prince Davith will lead a delegation to Earth. You have 2 months to convince them to stand down. If you fail, he didn't need to finish the sentence. If they failed, war would consume both species. The next 2 months were a blur of preparation. They assembled a delegation of 12, 6 humans and 6 Azurians, all chosen for their diplomatic skills and their commitment to peace. Mira brought the Voidstalker, now permanently bonded to her. The beast's presence had become a symbol, a reminder of how she'd survived and changed. The journey to Earth took 30 days. Mira spent the time teaching the Azurians about human culture, preparing them for a world that would see them as conquerors. Prince Davith proved to be a quick study, his sharp mind adapting to human social patterns with surprising ease. Your people value individualism over collective harmony, he observed one evening as they reviewed Earth's political structures. It's inefficient but oddly compelling. We value freedom, Mira corrected. The freedom to be wrong, to disagree, to choose our own paths. That's what you took from us, Davith met her eyes. I know. I'm beginning to understand what that means. When they finally reached Earth, Mira saw her homeworld for the first time in 3 years. The blue planet hung in space like a jewel, beautiful and fragile. Her heart ached with homesickness and hope. The delegation landed in Geneva, where Earth's united government maintained its headquarters. Security was intense. Armed soldiers lined every corridor, their weapons trained on the Azurian delegates. The tension was thick enough to cut. The negotiations lasted a week. Earth's government officials were skeptical and angry, years of occupation and loss making them reluctant to believe anything had changed. Mira showed them videos from Velshara, documented proof of humans with rights, working freely, living in dignity. This is one system out of hundreds, the Secretary General argued. You're asking us to abandon our people based on a pilot program that could be revoked tomorrow. Then expand it, Mira countered. Make it the condition for peace. Full citizenship for all humans in the Empire within 5 years, monitored by independent observers, verified by human representatives in every system. And if they refuse, then you launch your attack and millions die, Mira said bluntly. But you'll do it knowing that you rejected a chance for real change. Prince Davith stood. The Empire is not what it was. The attack on the palace proved that. We're at a crossroads. We can continue as we were and tear ourselves apart from within, or we can evolve. Your people have shown us that evolution is possible. Let us show you that we can learn. The deciding moment came when Mira did something unprecedented. Using the telepathic abilities the Venom had given her, she broadcast her memories directly to the assembled human leaders. They felt what she felt, saw what she saw, experienced 6 months of slow, painful, but genuine change. When it was done, several of them were weeping. Others sat in stunned silence. The Secretary General looked at Mira with new eyes. You're not fully human anymore, she said softly. No, Mira agreed. I'm something new. Maybe that's what both our species need. Something new. Something neither of us expected. The vote was close, but it passed. Earth would delay its attack for 1 year. In that time, the Empire would extend citizenship rights to all humans in 10 systems. If the expansion succeeded, Earth would negotiate a formal peace treaty. If it failed, the war would resume. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to perfect. But it was hope. On the flight back to Velshara, Mira stood in the ship's observation deck watching Earth shrink behind them. Prince Davith joined her, 2 cups of tea in his hands. Human tea, she noted with surprise. He'd been learning. Thank you, she said, accepting the cup. For what? Thank you for watching and comment for next part.